Well, I'm a professional wetland scientist and kind of semi-retired, but I specialized in ichthyology and I was going to graduate school. So I'm a fish biologist that also understands wetlands. And let's see if this works. I've been lucky enough to fish and hunt along the Ocala River for over 60 years. Today I live just 2 miles south of it. So I grew up in the Ocala National Forest. I was born in Daytona Beach. And I know the system very well. I'm one of the few scientists that knows what it looked like before there was the Rodman Pool. And by the way, we call it the Rodman Pool. We don't call it the Rodman Reservoir because, and I hope you can go along with me as we have these discussions in the future. It's not a reservoir. It never was. It never will be. It's a pool that was designed to float harbors. That's what it was, just like the Panama Canal. So it's the Rodman Pool, and it's in bad shape ecologically. And it's contributing to the destruction of tens of thousands of acres of wetland habitat along the Silver Springs, Silver River, Ocala River, and the St. Johns River. And we want to restore it. And I'm sure most of you know that. Of course, the culprit is primarily the Kirkpatrick Dam, used to be called the Rodman Dam. We know from good quantitative research that Bob Knight and others have done over the last 50 years, actually longer, that fish populations have declined substantially in this ecosystem. And these fish populations and invertebrate populations have declined in some places documented, particularly at Silver Springs, by over 90%. That basically means when I was going to Silver Springs in the good old days, they called it the fish bowl. Remember the fish bowl? Remember the catfish rodeo, the catfish basketball? Remember all that? They throw the dough ball in and the fish would come up, and it was absolutely gorgeous system. 90% of those fish are gone. A lot of what's left are exotic species. It's a terribly degraded system, but it can be restored. I want to make a positive note here. All of it I'm talking about is restorable, and it's restorable very easily. One of the candidate species that we're working on is the striped bass. The striped bass, think about its life history and what you know about salmon out northwest. You know what the salmon life cycle is? You know it lives in the ocean for most of its life, swims up, spawns, then it dies. The striper doesn't die, but it does spawn in a freshwater stream. The young grow up and they gradually work their way down, become adults and go back up. So basically, the striped bass is the Florida salmon, except it doesn't die at the end of that spawning period. There used to be millions of them in the St. Johns River. And I have pictures of my father holding some that he caught. Today there are no native striped bass at all. Zip. In the St. Johns River, all we have are stocked. They come from South Carolina, they're stocked. They grow up to be a certain size and they die. They can't spawn, they don't spawn, and they die. Some people still catch them in the St. Johns River, but if you're not stocking in a particular year, the population declines substantially. So it's not a naturally breeding population. We can restore that. Perfectly feasible to breach the Rodman Dam, the Kirkpatrick Dam, and allow for them, because they simply need to migrate up and spawn. And the only place that we know of, and the professional ichthyologists tell us, the only place they possibly could have spawned successfully was in the Ocala River, because the particular breeding habitat is that they need about 30 or 40 miles of clear, clean, cold, flowing water for that life history stage to survive. That's the only system in the St. Johns River that would allow that to happen. But think about that. And stripers get bigger than largemouth bass. I mean, we're talking 25, 30 pounds, folks. You've never seen a 30-pound black bass, and you never will. So these are fish that are bigger than bass, more fun to catch. And we can restore that fishery relatively easily. There are perhaps 20 or 30,000 acres, let me repeat that, 20 or 30,000 acres of floodplain forest along the Silver River, the Ocala River, going all the way down to the St. Johns River, that are under stress. They're either flooded too much or they're not flooded enough. And most of that stress has to do with situations that look like this. These trees are toppling over because the organic soils are not wet enough. The lack of flows out of Silver Springs and controls of water flows by the Kirkpatrick Dam mean that the soils are oxidizing. They are slowly burning up and the soil necessary to hold the trees in place is disappearing. And as a result, the trees are collapsing. They're falling over. The canopy of the forest is wide open, which it's not supposed to be. I've had professional foresters from the Forest Service go out there with me, and they were just astounded at the lack of structure and the destruction that's taking place. So, of course, the state of Florida stepped up and is going to do all this restoration work, and it's not going to be a problem, right? We're going to restore the Ocala River. Would everybody say that we're going to restore the Ocala River? The answer is yes, we are going to do it. Right, Jim? Yes. All right. But it's not going to be easy because it's a big political issue. And the main political issue has to do with the question about bass fishing in the Rodman Pool. It's a very small fishery. It's not nearly as productive as it used to be, and it certainly isn't the economic engine that people like to make out of this. It is not, and we have an economic study that the University of Florida is undertaking. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. EC is supporting that, and Florida Springs Institute and others are supporting that. And we're going to be looking for the facts about just these kind of things. And finally, no offense meant to Ron or to Kent regarding what to do about manatees in the St. Johns River, but guess what? There's a gorilla in the river. And that gorilla is breaching the Kirkpatrick Dam. And I think that we're going to hear Katie's going to talk about some more numbers too, but I've heard from professionals, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, that if we knock a hole in the dam and restore the river, we're going to have 200 to 400 manatees going up into the Ocala River, many going routinely and staying at Silver Springs. Imagine that. Silver Springs with manatees. Imagine an annual Silver Springs Manatee Festival, Marion County Manatee Festival. Think of the money, think of the excitement of manatees coming in. And think of the excitement among the manatees. I got a place to go, it's warm. That's all doable. And we're not talking 100 million, we're not talking 50 million, we're not talking $1 billion to do the restoration project. We're talking a piddling $5 to $10 million to knock the hole, and maybe another 5 or 10 to do the monitoring. It's necessary. It's an easy thing to do. And so your question to me, I'll either answer it sitting down or answering it up here, is going to be, okay, big deal. You say it's an easy thing to do. Why aren't we doing it? What do you think, Jim? You know why we're not doing it?
Starts with a P.
P. Politics. It's not about science. It's not about convincing people about stuff. It's nothing more than plain old raw politics that originates in Putnam County. They don't want the restoration, and they don't give a damn about the manatees. They don't give a damn about the striped bass. It's all about a few bass fishermen and a perceived economic benefit, which is nothing. So we're working on it. We appreciate your help. Thank you very much.